Hi friends, welcome back to my training series. I hope you're well and hanging in there. This last week was pretty busy for me and I'm feeling pretty tired. So let's talk about how I trained this week. On Monday, I was still in Las Vegas where I was visiting for a conference and I was assigned to walk it out. So I walked around the neighborhood of my Airbnb before I headed to the conference where I walked a ton more. On Tuesday, I was assigned an easy shakeout run of 40 to 60 minutes. So I went just outside town and ran some desert trails. I got in an easy 4.3 miles with 262 feet of gain. Then after my run, I packed up my stuff and flew back home to the Seattle area. Now normally on Tuesdays in the afternoon I do yoga over Zoom, but with Tuesday's travel and just sort of the discombobulation of the day, I ended up forgetting to do yoga on Tuesday afternoon. On Wednesday, my assignment was 60 minutes of easy running with strides. I did the run, but I totally forgot to do the strides. After the run, I texted my coach to let her know about my energy levels. We've been having a conversation about how I've been feeling really tired lately. So anyway, I reported how I felt after this run, which was pretty tired. And so we decided this was going to be a little bit of a recovery week. On Thursday, I was assigned 70 to 80 minutes of easy running with strides in the last third of the run. I didn't really push very hard during the easy portions, so I felt fairly strong during this run. I just kind of took it easy but felt strong. Then after work, I did hot yoga. On Friday, my assignment was a 40 to 60 minute shakeout run. I ran an easy loop on local roads, and I did 5.7 miles in 56 minutes. On Saturday, I was assigned 2 hours of running, and I had a really good day of running at Lord Hill. I was out for just over 2 hours and I got in 8.6 miles with 1,550 feet of gain. Finally, on Sunday, I was assigned 4 hours and I had the option to split it into a couple of runs, but due to life scheduling, I just had to get up really, really early and get it all done at once first thing. I was really tired when I started this run. My body was way more interested in hiking and shuffling than it was running, so I just put on my patience hat and I just ground out the hours. I finished with 14.7 miles and 1,870 feet of gain and feeling very tired. All right, so overall this week, I'm a little bit impressed that I managed to get in 46.5 miles with a total running time of 10 hours and 16 minutes. Although now I realize that Training Peaks doesn't consider walking or hiking when it does the running totals each week. So add another 31 minutes and 2 miles from Monday's walk to the total. Okay. That's the look at the training. Let's do some Q&A. Thanks to everybody who sent in questions this week. Let's start with some gear-related questions. Both Jared and Sue have some questions about pole usage, so I'll do these together. Sue commented in my Badger Mountain video asking about how hard I'm pushing on the poles when I'm going up a steep hill. And Jared asks about how I use poles. He said he couldn't get into the groove of pole usage during a recent 50K when he was on the flats and on the downhills. Well, these are awesome questions. First of all, I do believe poles really do help a lot for making it easier going uphill. When I was starting my journey into 200 milers, I was really skeptical about poles. And I was pacing a friend at Tahoe, and I can remember kind of questioning if the poles were worth it. And so I had some poles with me to test, and I took turns going up really steep climbs with and without poles. And it wasn't long before it proved to me that poles actually do make a difference. In terms of how hard I'm pressing into the poles, I think it's not super, super hard, but it's also not very light, easy. If I'm going up a steep climb, I'm working pretty hard with my arms in order to assist my legs in getting up the hill. Just enough to help ease the burden on my climbing legs. And then a lot of times I try to do each arm separately, kind of left, right. But if it's a pretty steep hill, I'll get into it with both hands all at the same time. Um, but yeah, it's a good reminder that when you're doing strength training to also train the upper, because the upper parts of your arms are really involved in the pull use. So um, anyway, to Jared's question, I really pretty much only use my poles on uphill climbs. If I'm going to be running a flat or running a down, I'll either put my poles away if I'm done with them for now, or I'll just carry them in my hands, either one on each side or put them both in one hand because they're really lightweight. Um, Maybe later on in a 200 when I'm really tired, maybe I'll just use the poles as I'm walking to help kind of keep me steady, or if I'm going downhill, employ the poles to help steady me on the downhills and give my knees a little bit of a break. Yeah, but for the most part, I kind of agree with you that on going downhill, poles can kind of get in the way. So it just depends on what you're doing, especially if you're running 50Ks. I could see definitely that use the poles in the climbs, but then set them aside or hold them when you're running faster. All right, Jason asks about my average and peak running volumes. Actually, since this isn't a stat that I really keep too close a track of, I'm going to refer you to my Strava training log. My weekly mileages are kind of all over the place, with many of them in the 20s or 40-mile range. If I do get into the high 50s or 60s, that's quite a bit of a big week for me. I just find that my weekly training is kind of all over the place, so I encourage you to check out my Strava training log. You can look back all the way to the beginning of my running career if you're really interested. See every single run that I've done. So the link is in the description below. Speaking of volume and mileage, Chelsea asks if I consider hiking miles as a part of my total mileage. I totally do. But I do notice this week, because of your question, I took a look at the Training Peaks stats. For some reason, they're keeping the totals separately, running versus hiking and walking. So they don't total them all up in the same way. But Strava does put them all together in the weekly mileage. And I totally agree with Strava on this one. I would prefer, and I do mentally keep track of all my miles for hiking. In a 200 especially, we hike so much of the event that it's really worth training, and paying attention to your hiking during your weekly training efforts. I mean, even in a 100-miler, there's going to be a lot of hiking involved. So yeah, ultra running in general, I think it's really good to focus on hiking as a thing that you train specifically to do. And yeah, I do consider it a part of my weekly total. It's just that I think when I show my Training Peaks data, it's just keeping it separate. This question asks if I ever switch to cycling if I'm tired. I might do some cycling as I recover from a big event in order to have some lower impact activity. Last spring, after I did Cocodona, I did a little bit of cycling during my activities, but I don't really enjoy cycling very much, so I don't do it a whole lot. I'm probably more likely to use my indoor rower if I'm looking for some cross training or something to get off of my feet. But for the most part, I just try to be really consistent with my assigned training runs. Even if I'm tired, get out there anyway. It is valuable training to get out on tired legs and on a tired body, on a tired mind. So yeah, for me, I don't do a lot of cross training, but I do recognize its value. But yeah, not too much cycling for me. Finally, Chad asks for tips for his first 100 miler. When I was training for my first 100-mile run, I was given the advice to maintain a positive attitude. And I was actually told the quote attributed to Henry Ford that says, "Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right." And Chad, I know that you're a positive dude, but this advice is something that I think about all the time. It's really worth remembering when the race gets really, really hard and you have to embrace the suck. Don't allow any sorts of negative thoughts to creep in, because they could lead you to think about quitting, which might lead you to actually quitting. So I just try to keep a positive attitude at all times. And even when things aren't going great, just try to put a positive spin on everything and embrace it and know that it's going to get better. That's one of the great things about ultras, is that the race is long enough that you can actually see something turn around. But I do have another tip too, which is to get good at night running. I mentioned in a previous vlog episode about how I use both a waist lamp and a headlamp during my night running. And I recommend you do the same. I think it's really good advice because good illumination will lead you to having more confidence in running at nighttime, and that'll help you move a little bit more quickly when some of the other runners are slowing down in the dark. So you'll be running many hours in the dark, so I think it's worth getting good at it. Good luck to you. I'm really excited for you to do your first 100, and I can't wait to see your video about it. Okay, thank you all for your questions this week. If you have questions I can answer in next week's video, please put them in the comments below, and we'll do another Q&A section in next week's video. A big thank you to all the channel members for all your extra support of the channel. I'm very, very thankful to you. Thank you so much. And I hope you all have a really great week next week. I hope I also have a great week. So putting in a good word for all of us. Let's have a good one. See you next week. Thanks. Bye-bye.